I stopped at a roadhouse in Texas, little place called Hamburger Dams. I heard that old jukebox a playing a song about a truck driving man. Pour me another cup of coffee, for it is the best in the land. I'll put a nickel in the jukebox and play the truck driving man. The waitress then brought me some coffee. I thanked her and called her back again. I said that old song sure does fit me, 'cause I'm a truck driving man. Pour me another cup of coffee, for it is the best in the land. I'll put a nickel in the jukebox and play the truck driving man. I stepped back aboard my old semi, and then like a flash I was gone. Got them old truck wheels a rolling. I'm on my way to San Antone. Welcome, workers and friends. Welcome back to Anti-Imperialist America. I'm your host, Dust James, the Marxist Leninist truck driver. I'm coming to you live from my humble home in rural North Carolina. I have a beautiful glass of unnamed apple beverage. It is late evening, very late evening, close to midnight. Topic of the day's show is Race to the Bottom. This is a special broadcast. Um, I'm going to try some experimentation of something different. This is an open live. If you look down in the description on YouTube, or if you look at somewhere on Facebook, I think they might have it as well. There is a link. And in that link, if you want to come on live and have a conversation with me, um, you're happy to come on. If you look on the Facebook, if you look in the if you're on Facebook and you see it at the top there, you click on the post. You'll see the link at the top there. I can also make it. I can also make it available. Let me make this public. I'll make the link available. But if you want to hop on, you're welcome to hop on, and we can have a conversation. You can come on live, and we'll have a conversation. Open mic night tonight. Go ahead and make it public. All right, I got that public. Let me try to. I'm going to try to recopy this link and put it in the text of the body as well.
All right, I got that public. Let me try to. I'm
Boom.
going to try to recopy.
I'm gonna check it out on YouTube and make sure.
Body as well. All right, I got that public.
There we go. I'm gonna check it on YouTube as well and make sure it's working there. And then we'll get into our topic for the evening, the race to the bottom.
Body as well. All right, I got that.
Yep. All right. If anybody wants to join live, they can join live. So if there's no takers just yet, I'll go ahead and start the stream. Shout out to Space Communist, one of my favorite watchers of the show. Hope you're doing well tonight. Was it Corona, California you're from, brother? Okay. All right. So I think I'll keep that down there at the bottom, just in case people want to join in. You should come up here. You can get in the comments as well. So I'm gonna try a bunch of stuff. I might not even leave this. Let's see, media. Let's see. Let's see if I can share screen, man. I've been trying to experiment with a bunch of stuff. Okay, looks like I can share screen as well. Check that out. I can share screen with y'all as well. Oh, but then I can't do it on here. That's interesting. That's interesting. Um, let me try it this way. I'm gonna try to share a news story I found, kind of experimenting with a few different ways of going about this. Nuh-uh. I'm just gonna leave the share screening alone, the screen sharing alone for this episode. But I saw an article being shared around. Well, first I want to talk about that song. It's like I'm a truck driving man. I love that song. It's a very beautiful song. My uncle in upstate New York has a country band, and they've done a number of covers of that song, and it's really telling. It's talking about him, about a truck driver who's sitting down at a table, and he's talking to a waitress. He compliments him on the coffee, and he plays a song on a jukebox about being a truck driving man, and he tells her to come back again to talk with him. And it's really telling because, being a truck driver, you'd make a lot of sacrifices for your family. And one of those is, being by yourself all the time, being on the road. I remember it. So that's probably one of the only social interactions that truck driver is going to have. This is before, this is before, Facebook and all that. So, and he's not, and this is really before cell phones. Cell phones were a big deal. Before cell phones, before Facebook. Song was written maybe in the 70s or even earlier, probably early. I think it's written by Buck Owens. So Buck Owens, that's even earlier than that's maybe the 50s. But that's probably the only interaction he's going to have that day. And I remember that, truck drivers were kind of like attention seeking. It was, I noticed people would love to go sit in the restaurants at night and sit in the stool, and they get other truckers around them, and they just wait for someone to talk to. And if there wasn't no restaurant, then folks would go into trucker lounge, this little ratty, unkept room with a few chairs, or maybe even a fancier place, couches, and you got a TV, and people would sit around and just wait for someone else to come in so they could have someone to talk to for that evening. Usually be a crime show or something on. And I was over the road for a number of years, and I finally got off, got my son, bought a house, and I've been having a hard time finding a job that's, has health care, has decent pay, has, doesn't work me to death on the hours. This is my third job trying to find locally. Within the last year, in October, I'll have been a year off the road. Started driving when I was 22. I'm 31 now, and only since last October, I've been off the road. And I've had issues with finding healthcare. I've had overworked hours. I finally found a job that almost works. The healthcare is not the best. The hours are a little long. The pay's not the best, and but it's close enough. The pay's enough to get by, and we found, I was able to get healthcare for myself through the job, and my wife and my son's healthcare through the marketplace. And we're getting by, and I'm home a lot more than I've ever been before. And I'm working a lot less hours than I've ever done before. But mind you, a lot less hours is still anywhere from 50, 60 hours a week. That's Still a lot less hours, but I was used to working 70, 80, 100 hours a week. Shit was crazy. And, and I kind of did some research. Why am I having such a hard time finding a decent job in North Carolina after, I put in 7 good years? I got 7 years experience. Why am I having such a hard time? And I did a little bit more research and I found that North Carolina is the state that has the lowest paid trucking jobs in the country. Yes, North Carolina has some of the lowest paid trucking jobs in the country. I found that out. And then I was also equally shocked to find out that, let me share this a few places, that according to a new report, that North Carolina has the worst jobs in the country. Yes, it says North Carolina has the worst jobs in the country. Isn't that insane? And it wasn't based off pay. It was this. It was this activist labor rights organization called Oxfam, and Oxfam makes that list to highlight labor issues. And the reason why they did it is not because North Carolina has, the lowest paid jobs in the country or that they have the most unemployment. It's that we have the least labor protections. I thought someone was right behind me. We have the least labor protections in the country. We have no rights to unionize. If we try to unionize, we're systemically targeted against and attacked illegally. We have 7.25. The federal minimum wage is the state minimum wage. We have some of the worst pay in combination with no labor protections, in combination with one of the hardest states to form a union and one of the hardest states to keep a union. And it really is the legacy of the Black Belt South. It is the horrible labor laws going back to the times of slavery. And slavery, wasn't just horrible for, black folks who are in slavery. Slavery was horrible for all working people in the state. If you got to work beside somebody who works for free, what do you think your wages are going to be? I mean, it is absolutely ridiculous. So I mean, it really goes back, and it really shows how national oppression and class oppression are very much linked, completely linked to each other. And if you look at national oppression is a material system to maintain material super profits. I mean, you got the ideology behind national oppression that reinforces it as racism and white supremacy. But racism and white supremacy themselves are not the main enemy. The main enemy is imperialism, monopoly capitalism, and earlier capitalism um, that use national oppression to take out profits from the general working class and take out super profits from oppressed nations. And this is done through various of state and political and economic systems where money and resources are denied working and oppressed people. And having an oppressed nation reinforces class oppression. Because, I mean, the idea of the labor market, there's also the idea of solidarity. The old saying, an injury to one is an injury to all. So the idea is if they can, if they can discriminate against people based on race, they can discriminate people based on sex or gender, if they can discriminate um, against people for being trans, etc., that pulls down the rights and the wages of all workers. An injury to one is an injury to all. I also say a victory to one is a victory to all. And this can be seen on the international stage with international solidarity. I get tired of these ultras out here saying how China is capitalist and China is that, and they don't care that China's lifted 850 million people out of poverty. Well, if you look at the idea of solidarity and apply the saying, a victory for one is a victory to all, that is 850 million people having a victory. That is 850 million people that 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 are a little bit less desperate and less likely to have our jobs moved in. Now let's talk about China. Now, China, part of the reason why the deindustrialization of the United States was moving jobs over to China, where there was less wages. And that's kind of this idea of the race to the bottom. Now, it's interesting though. Wages in the United States have been going down, and wages in China have been increasing. Standard of living in China has been increasing. And we have to look at why was China poor in the first place. China was poor in the first place because of centuries of colonialization, including the time note called the Century of Humiliation, where the British Empire, after the Chinese government saw the Chinese people were being addicted to drugs being sold by the British, the Chinese government attempted to outlaw drugs, the opium. And then the British waged two wars, the Opium Wars, to make sure that the Chinese people were hooked on opium, to keep the country poor and dependent, and to extract super profits. Okay, so let's fast forward to was it 1949, I believe, the Chinese Revolution. I hopefully I'm getting that right. My history, I'm good with basic with larger concepts, but sometimes dates get me. So we fast forward to the 40s, the Chinese Revolution. Mao led the peasantry, who were oppressed people and some of the worst conditions ever. Please go back and look at my recent study with Zhang Yu, the Red Bolshevik rapper, and comrade Carlos Laguna Driscoll, and my co-host, Australian labor unionizer David Fox. We had a great study from the Center for Political Innovation. Um, we Are City Builders Manual. We studied an earlier piece of Mao about, a peasant uprising even before the Chinese Revolution. There's a beautiful line in there about the people were ready like a storm, and I think that's coming here as well. Give me a moment. I want to share this out to a few places. Just give me a second. Maybe I want to put a shout out to Space Communist says, you should write a people's history of country music. Man, that would be great. Maybe I should, man. I'm usually better with speeches than my writing. I have to develop my writing skills. I'm out here. Shout out to Ramiro Sebastian Funes. Please subscribe to Ramiro Sebastian Funes. He has some of the best media on YouTube exposing the imperialist media, and it's called Unmasking Imperialism. And here we go. And shout out to Key and Atlick. They will argue that we have the right to form a union in the private sector in NC. And in fact, we do. What we can't do is require non-union workers to pay dues to the union. Well, I think that is a bad thing. We should be able to have closed shops. I mean, closed shops Closed shops are a good thing. I mean, the power of the union is a good thing. We need protections, and any bit of power we can get is to be better. They act like, oh, they're forcing. Well, if you don't want the job, I mean, if you don't want to join the union, you can't get the job. It's simple as that. I mean, that's just a way of telling people to de incentivize people for paying the dues to the union. That's all that's about. Right to work is one of the most horrible, disgusting laws out there, and it really de-incentivized people to join the union because to have a union you have to have dues because having a union takes people working to fight on your behalf. You don't pay dues, they can't do it. So if you start a union in a factory, and the people in that factory are going to be like, "Hey, I, I don't want to join the union," but they're still going to get the same benefits of the union. I mean, that's great for the union organizers. I mean, it's good that everyone's getting the benefits, but if they're not mandated to pay the dues, there's no way to maintain that organization. So in the name of freedom, you're destroying you're destroying one of the few representations and organizations that represent the working class. Right to work is a horrible legacy of slavery, and a horrible legacy of the horrible the state of labor laws and the state of workers' protections in the South. All right, so I'm gonna share this out to a few more places before we really get hopping. And this is open mic night. So if anyone wants to come on and have a conversation with me and hop on the stream, the link is available. I think my camera got blurry. Let me go ahead and update that camera. It will show my camera twice if I let it. It's an interesting stream here. Shit, my camera got blurry. Well, it's already midnight. I got most of what I wanted to say in. All right. So I was going to share this out to a few places and continue on with the stream. Yeah, right to work is a horrible anti-union law. Closed shops are a necessity to be able to, you know, to get people to pay union dues because unions need union dues to maintain themselves. And you also need participation more than that to make sure a union don't become corrupt. You got to keep it democratic. You got to get the masses of people organized in the union. It's like when it's like these organizations these that give out fancy glossy propaganda. They go out and they give out these nice printed posters. They give it here, they give it to everyone they want, and then you find them in the trash. And then when you sell a newspaper, you sell a book, someone paid for it, they wanted to get it, they paid for it, they value that, they keep that. Well, what are you saying about the benefits of a union when the benefits of a union are free and you don't have to pay for the benefits of a union? Ugh. Then what good is that? It de-incentivizes and weakens the union. All right. So I'll get into this. North Carolina was declared by Oxfam, an activist pro-labor rights organization, to have the worst jobs in the country, worst working conditions, and the least labor protections in the country. And I'm absolutely horrified, and I absolutely see it. And I'm just thinking back on the fact that some of the great and beautiful people that I was able to meet, some people that gave their life to the union movement and whatever capacity it was. I mean, these unions out here are backing the Democrats. They're backing the imperialist system. But I know comrades who joined them, became leaders in them, and pushed them to become more democratic and pushed them to truly represent the people. And in doing so and giving their life to the struggle and the labor movement, they were able to make real victories for the working class, improving the wages and giving protections to people that had no protections. And they really, if you look at the idea of solidarity, injury to one is an injury to all, a victory to one is a victory to all. They lifted wages of the entire wage market. So just as China, I mean, if you look at this into China, so I was going back that because of global systems, shipping systems, they were able to move jobs over to China. Now, the reason why those people were so desperate in the first place was because of colonialism and imperialism. And then the Chinese Communist Party has been able to take U.S. investment and able to give people in the countryside who had abysmal conditions, and then they moved to the city and worked and had their conditions slightly improved because of the Communist Party, even though that wage they were getting paid was very much less compared to a U.S. worker. It was an improvement over the subsistence farming that they had to deal with. And now that China has used um, that investment and really harnessed the labor of their people, because they have a socialist system and not a capitalist system. And a capitalist system, especially the United States, monopoly capitalist system, all the money we make is taken from us and given to this group of banking cartels, is taken from us and spent on these wars. And it's clear, this recently 20 years in Afghanistan, trillions of dollars wasted. Now we look at China and we look at they have been building high speed rail. They have been building up their cities look like science fiction novels. They have been improving their roads. I go out here in these roads in the United States and it's all crumbling to bits. China's been able to improve their roads, improve their trains, improve their shipping systems. And because of that, this is the way, this is improving the productive forces, improving infrastructure, which helps the future and helps build up the country. So they unleashed the power of the people, unleashed the power of the people, and built up their system, lifted 800 million people, 150 million people out of poverty. And now wages are raising in China. I recently shared this picture on Facebook. It was a Chinese kid. He's like, "Eat all your food, son, because there's people starving in America." That was an old saying in the United States going back to 1950s, 1960s, or before. Eat everything on your plate because there's people starving in China. And in 1950s and 1960s, there was people starving in China because of colonialism and imperialism. Even though the communists were already in power, there's still people starving because just because the communists take power doesn't mean overnight they're going to end starvation. I mean, very quickly they did. They mechanized agriculture and they ended a lot of starvation. But to be able to truly lift people's wages, you have to build infrastructure, build the productive forces, and expand the economy. I recently shared a meme on Facebook. Shout out to Joey Shantz of the John Brown Volunteers. He shared a meme. There's a meme going around where I think it was like, the Union. There was a stagecoach with a man on a horse, with a man on a stagecoach, man in a wagon, whipping a horse, and that's the issue. And then down below it says, a union, and they get rid of the guy on the horse, and they got two horses, two more horses pulling. Okay, good. And then like the manager class or the capitalist class, you got a bunch of people with whips and only one horse. And then the communist system is a car. The communist system is a car. So communism, socialism is a more advanced political economic system with a more advanced economic base. With that economic base, some more apple, unnamed apple beverage in my cup here. Expand the economic base and create a new, more advanced system. It really is the difference between a wagon and a car. Capitalism is a horse and buggy, and communism is a car. It's a more advanced, more effective, more just system. Freedoms and democracy and all these things are only possible because of a more advanced economic base. So I'm getting to the fact is that even though jobs moved over to China, the reason why they were able to move over to China was not because communism was selling on its people. It was that the Chinese Communist Party was unleashing the people to improve their conditions. And when they improve their conditions, they improve everyone's conditions because that's one less that means they can't move jobs over there. And then wages started increasing in China, and then these companies tried to move the jobs elsewhere, try to move the jobs other places. I mean, that's really what's needed. We need economic development in all countries. We need to improve the conditions of all workers. A victory for one is a victory for all. And in the United States, the worst jobs and the least job protections are jobs in North Carolina. And I really do think we need maybe democratic pressure from below in the unions, more radical unions, as well as wildcat organizations, mutual aid groups. There's tons of stuff that we could be doing other than going around giving our money to the sheepdogs and the Democrats over and over and over again to improve our conditions instead of playing the culture wars and blaming fellow workers for voting for Trump and voting for Republicans, and then backing a portion of the ruling class that doesn't have our interest at heart. Unite and fight. Black and white unite and fight. Workers unite and fight. It doesn't say all liberals unite. It doesn't say all leftists unite. It says workers of the world unite. It says workers and oppressed people of the world unite. And that's not what you see from the synthetic left. So I get back to the topic of the show. The topic of the show is race to the bottom. Race to the bottom. Let's get back to that study. So, and there was some criticism of that study from right-wing groups. I read that thing went viral. Shout out to, there's a local rock punk musician, I believe, in Greensboro. Her name is Lila Nur. And she's part of a group called the Muslims, which is a kind of, left, it's kind of it's in a liberal space, but it's a left type of musician band, and then you can check them out. But Lila Nur shared out the results of the study, and it was shared over by almost 9,000 people, reshared it out. And it made a little bit of a media storm here in North Carolina. And this was picked up by the News and Record, and this was picked up by even conservative media. And the criticisms of the conservative media was that this publication was wrong because of the level of immigration to North Carolina. I mean, I immigrated myself here from upstate New York in the early 90s. And well, the mid and late 90s. At the same time, a lot of people from Mexico came up, and around the similar time because of NAFTA. And why is it that people wanted to move to North Carolina? And the conservative studies also pointed out that we have a lower rate of unemployment compared to other places. So how does this explain if North Carolina has the worst jobs in the country? Why is the unemployment rate so low? And why are people risking death going, crossing borders and coming from all over the country to be here? And the answer is the race to the bottom. North Carolina, has lots of jobs, but they're the lowest paying jobs with the least protections and the least unionized. 90s, they were having a boom with jobs. And the reason is because they were moving all of the jobs from the more unionized north, from the more taxed north, and other places where they actually give people public services, where they actually care about them on the job, where the basic social safety net. And they're like, hey, come to North Carolina and you can pay our people almost nothing. We'll give you tax write-offs and tax incentives to come here. We want you to bring your business here. And this is the race to the bottom. This is happening all over the country. Instead of the country instead of China, what China does is they have a centralized government that's controlled by 90 million member Communist Party. And they tell the corporations what to do. They say, you're not going to pollute the environment. They say, you're going to pay at least this much wages. You're going to give back this much in taxes. And you're going to help us build the infrastructure. You're going to help us build the economy. You're going to help us build the economy. So that's what China does. But North Carolina and the United States in general, the corporations are like, we have jobs to offer. Why don't you charge the least taxes? Not even charge tax. Why don't you take your money that you took from working people, that you taxed off working people, and give it to the corporations as corporate subsidies? And give them free land and let them pay as little as possible, and put out laws like right to work laws I mentioned earlier that destroy the unions. It's the race to the bottom. It's a race to the bottom. So the reason why a lot of people came here, immigrants from Mexico, immigrants from other part of the country, because there was jobs here, but these jobs were some of the lowest paying jobs. They're lowest paying jobs because of this race to the bottom bullshit. And what we need to do is we need a government of action to fight for working families. We need we need a strong, this is what happens when you have a weak government. This is what happens when you have a weak government controlled by the corporations. We need a strong government controlled by the people that can mandate and tell these corporations that we built that would be nothing without our labor, that you are going to reinvest in the community. Your very existence is not for profit. Your very existence is to serve the people, or you're not going to be allowed to exist. That's what happens in China. That's what happens when they got these crackdowns going on now, and they're changing, and as their society develops, they're going to have, it's going to, the level of private, cooperative, and publicly owned things can fluctuate based on the needs of the economy and the people overall. But over here, the corporations just do whatever the hell they want, and we pay the price. Our infrastructure is crumbling. They have these 20-year, $1 trillion wars that don't benefit the people. And that really is the race to the bottom. And that's what I mean by the race to the bottom. And people, and I am absolutely honored that I was able to meet Crystal Lee Sutton. Crystal Lee Sutton, who inspired the movie Norma Ray, who in the 70s, and she was also a country music listening person. And if you look in the movie, she was listening to Loretta Lynn, and Cash. She's listening to all the country greats. and she helped form an integrated union in Burlington, North Carolina. Graham County is one of the most racist counties in the state. And she was able, and racist counties in the state, and one of the worst paid and least labor protections in the state. Organized a union up there in Burlington of the textile workers, interracial union. And I met her at a meeting that where we had invited people from Haiti, trade union leaders from Haiti, to speak. This was after the earthquake, when the U.S. went in there. Instead of the U.S., the Cuba sent doctors. Other people sent a bunch of people, and the U.S. sent their military, and then kicked out the Cuban doctors and a bunch of other people, and then occupied it militarily. And then organizations like the Red Cross, which they were paying, telling everybody to give money to help the Haitian people, were only lifting up and helping the people that benefited U.S. interests. So the trade union leader was saying you should give money directly to the trade unions so the trade unions can benefit the people directly as a representative of the people and not the representative of an imperialist non governmental organization like the Red Cross. But that's the meeting. I was very glad to meet her and sing at her funeral, sing at one of her, not her, one of her memorial services. And I am absolutely inspired, by all the people who have dedicated and fought for the working class in the worst conditions. And your sacrifice is not forgotten. And we, the progressive people, the people who fight for the working class in peace, are carrying on your legacy. That's what I try to do. I work. They worked me to death this damn week. I've been having like 12-hour shifts back to back to back to back. Um, it's been getting. I mean, I actually Labor Day weekend. I actually took my wife and my son up to visit my grandfather in upstate New York, and he worked in the same chain factory for over 40 years. And he bought some horses, and he's getting old in his 80s. The house is falling apart. And my son got to see him for the first time, and my wife got to meet him for the first time. And my wife was able to see, where I came from. I came down to the South when I was 5 years old. My wife was, it was very beautiful, but we did that. It's a good 12, 13 hours up there. And we did that trip in 3 days. So I got off work at 5 o'clock. I had a tire blowout with me, which put me behind even further. I had a tire blowout on me. I left here about 5 o'clock. I didn't get there till 7 in the morning the next day. I got up at my sister apartment, where she lives in assisted. She lives in an assisted living up there. And me, my my dad, my wife, and my son all slept in her little assisted living house. And we got there about 7, 8 in the morning. And I took a 4-hour nap, got up, and went out the next day. And I went down to Ithaca, and I went to my favorite record store, Angry Mom Records, out there in Ithaca, and I bought a big old stack of country records. There's a lot of I'm a big fan of country music, and Ithaca is an interesting area. My uncle had that band, but outside of Ithaca, there's nothing but hay fields and dairy farms up there, and country music still is a place of that. And it's kind of a little bit behind all the other places. So they had quite a good selection of records in that little college town. Um, and I was able to get my hands on some Earl Haggard and a bunch of stuff. And it was pretty good. And the next day, we took the whole clan, including my mom and her current husband and my dad. It wasn't even that awkward. Up to this big internationally known park called Watkins Glen, and it's absolute beautiful. If folks on my Facebook want to scroll down and find that post, I have me and my wife at Watkins Glen. Is absolute beautiful park. There's these beautiful like layered rock formations on both sides, and this river that goes in between. You walk up these steps and under caves, and there's waterfalls, and it was absolutely gorgeous. And and the most of the people there were, people. There was people from all over the world. There was people from India. There was people from China. And it's interesting. Places where they have growing middle class, a growing middle class, compared to the United States that's falling. And the majority and the people I took, my mom, they all live in trailers and rural areas around that place, and they never have the money or the time. They got that beautiful landscape, that beautiful, place, but they're never able to go because they never got the time or the money to do or go anywhere, even though that beautiful natural resource is sitting there right there beside them. And I was able to take my mom and her husband and my dad and my brother, and they got a beautiful resource, and they never go up and see it. And it was the same thing when me and my wife went down to Mexico. When me and my wife went down to Mexico, we went to Oaxaca, and there's this place like a few hours outside of Oaxaca, and I don't remember the name of the place, but it's this beautiful pool on top of a mountain. And when I went there, the same thing was there. It was mostly like Europeans. There wasn't as much Chinese people there. I'm not sure why. It was mostly Europeans, um, that I saw there. And the local Mexican people, have to work so hard. They never got time to go on vacation. They don't have the money to go in there. And me and my wife brought her, we rented a van, like a 15 passenger van, and we took all the people from this little village outside of Oaxaca, several hours outside of Oaxaca, and all the majority indigenous people, working class people, have never been to this beautiful tourist destination that was like right next to them because they're always working. They have never had time to go. And whenever I travel and I take, the limited money I have, I didn't even have the money, to be honest with you. I heard got credit avail. That's about it. That's a whole nother issue. But I heard we had a 3-day weekend. And we never been to New York. I want to take my family up there, and it was a good trip. But it was exhausting. And then we got there Saturday morning. I slept a little bit, went out, and then went out on Sunday, and then Monday morning, we had that 12, 13-hour ride back, and it was exhausting. And then my first day, Tuesday, 12-hour day. My next day, Wednesday, 13-hour day. And I got home this tonight. And I actually got home a little earlier today, and I just passed out. That's why I'm still up right now. I just passed out and slept. And I'm finally getting caught up. We got a good show going on Saturday. Hey, I see Anti-Imperialist USA. Martin Zer. If anybody wants to come on live right now, I'm kind of sad that no one took up my opportunity. I think I'm just going to do that from now on. I'm going to post the link. I'm going to change the link every time and post the description. I'd love for people to come on and come live with me. Make it, a wider conversation. I'm getting near the end, so I just want to talk about, the race to the bottom. We got all these states and local governments competing and saying you can rip off our people the best. We'll even take our people's tax money and give it to you if you come here. You got, and it's it's power. And I don't even blame these little towns. These little towns have people in poverty and they need jobs. It really is the fault and lack of a government of action to fight for working families. We need a strong government that can fight on behalf of the people, that can be stronger than corporations. You will never have a free society when the wealth of the few the wealth and the power is put in the hands of so few people. It's impossible to have a functioning government when these large international corporations have 100 times and 1,000 times as much money and power as this government. It's never going to happen. Hmm. Know what I'm saying? Yeah, I'd love to have you back on Anti-Imperialist America, but the thing is, I'm trying to. I have an open. This is an open chat today, and I actually put the link in the description. It's both in the YouTube description and in the Facebook description. And if anybody wants to join me, they're free to go ahead. And I think I will continue to do this until I have some random. And I'd like to get people who don't agree with me on. That would be great. I'm looking to expand the show a little bit. So I think I'm going to go over these comments a little bit. That was a little bit of a summary. We need a government of action to fight for working families that can stand up to these multinational corporations and put the mandate of the people and expand, and then through the mandate of the people, they can take our resources that we produce, invest in infrastructure, and expand the system, expand the productive forces, and improve the lives of the people. That's right. Think Ryan Michaels. Yeah, 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 it is a little bit late. I got home and took a nap today. So I'm going to go back over some of these comments that I had lost. Keen Attic, too often right to work laws based on a reason not to organize a union. Do it do it anyways. Unionize, but that is a hurdle. There's plenty of hurdles and not do it. But as people are getting desperate, there's more opportunity to organize the people more than ever. As people are hitting the wall and people are getting squeezed, inflation is outrageous right now. Um, People are being more likely to invest time in organizing. Martin Zier, with outsourcing, exporting of manufacturing, temps and part times on short term jobs, and globalization, unions need to be restructured and redefined. Nice hat. Yeah, thank you. That's a very good. I think that's very fun. That's a very good observation. I mean, really, the fight back comes out of the need to resist, the current system. I mean, if you look at the socialists who've come into power in recent years, they were large mass coalitions against neoliberalism. They were anti-neoliberal coalitions. If you look at Bolivia and the water wars, which the Australians mentioned this morning on their show. If you haven't subscribed to David Fox, please subscribe to my co-host of Working Class Revolt, David Fox. He's been having We Are Builders Australia study almost every Thursday. And recently this morning, Comrade Nate mentioned the fact that the neoliberals went so far in Bolivia to outlaw you collecting rainwater off your roof because they own the rights to the Bolivian water. And they were able to amass a fight against that. And it was a large indigenous group, labor groups. We got to start focusing on economic issues. Know who the banks are. Oh, looks like we got Joey on here. I'm gonna bring him up on here. There we go. Uh, I'm gonna bring Joey up, and I'm gonna finish my thought. There you go. Okay, so let me finish my thought. Uh, Man, I'm a little lost. I was finishing my thought. Okay.
Sorry about that.
No. I got this. Oh, the Comrade Australia mentioned that the Nestle company owned the rights to the water in Bolivia. So what happened out of result of that? There was a multi-group coalition of indigenous people, workers groups who came together to resist the material conditions and along the material contradictions. and they were able to eventually take power and form a socialist government. So, in response to Comrade Zier's saying, yes, there are temp jobs, there's part timers, there's short term jobs, globalization. We need to redefine the union structure. And maybe it doesn't even have to be a union, maybe it could be a community group. Maybe it can be a wildcat organization. We got to think about and be innovative and innovate our political ideas. All right, let's see, Comrade Joey. Maybe you give us a quick report what you've been up to. Any response to what's going on? What's going on, brother?
Yeah, absolutely. So, my name is Joey Shantz. If you guys aren't familiar with me, I'm one of the John Brown volunteers that's currently canvassing out here in New York City, trying to spread socialist ideology across the country. And over the last few weeks since we last talked, a lot of good things are happening. We actually have an event coming up with Joint Center for Political Innovation. So actually, if you're in the New York City area and you are interested in socialist education, we're going to be having an event at Union Square this coming Saturday at 5 p.m. Definitely recommend checking it out.
Right. I'm not really sure what to do with this. I got this idea that maybe instead, like when I do my Anti-Imperialist America, which is usually my solo show, I figured, why don't I open it up and have like open callers, like have people so I posted the link and the YouTube and the thing, and you were the first person to come up. People weren't used to the format. But thanks for coming on. I guess I was actually about to finish. Maybe you could help me cover these last few comments here, and then I'll head off. My next comment is, let's see, go here. My next comment is outsourcing and urban and was that Uberification. So I got you. It's a good word. Uberification has been seen before in the U.S. 100 years ago, lumberjacks were offered independent contracts, much like Uber drivers get now. That's a very good point, Eltic. I can't pronounce names very well. Keenan. Yeah, this has been a class struggle is an ongoing struggle. It's not an overnight thing, It's not, and just like Lenin said, if conditions change in 24 hours, our tactics change in 24 hours. I mean, Joey, any response to those ideas or comments?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's funny. We're getting closer and closer to a time period that there's a lot of similarities that you can draw from the working class struggles in the 1910s, 1920s. Uber is a perfect example of that, honestly. And if we really want to, change workers' conditions, we need to start having a conversation how to not just organize your general work space. So the thing that's unique about Uber, unlike situations in the past, is that Uber, the workers are disconnected from each other. There's not a lot of opportunity for working class solidarity. So one of the conversations I think we do need to have is, how do we bring a revolutionary message to people that work in the gig economy, like places like Uber, Lyft, you have your DoorDash, Uber Eats, and all that stuff. All these people, they're making, honestly, in a lot of cases, less than the minimum wage, which is already $7.25. So the material conditions of these folks is extremely bad, especially when you account for wear and tear in your vehicle. All of those workers have to pay for that. I've never worked in the gig economy, but I've had a lot of friends who have, and they have told me a lot of the horror stories of what it's like to work in the gig economy. So we need to find a way to reach out to these workers for the revolutionary message, so they have an idea of what path they need to go down.
All right, so I look at the next comment here from Yogi Fish. Isn't it a good thing if they hit the bottom? And I want to, and it kind of is, and it kind of isn't. What I'm talking about here in North Carolina, there was a recent study that North Carolina had the worst some of the worst wages and the least protections in the country. And when I came here in the early 90s, um, it was because all these companies were flowing in to chase the lowest wages and to chase the lowest tax revenues. And this is why, and it's a good thing that, they did bring job. A job is better than no job, but we don't need a race to the bottom. There shouldn't be a bottom. We need a government action to fight for working families that can tell these corporations that if you want to do business anywhere, that you have to treat your workers fairly, that you have to give this much back to society, that you have to contribute this to the economy, or you're not going to be allowed to do business. So instead of having workers' pay get lower and lower and lower, and corporate and local municipalities, getting less and less tax revenue to give us basic services, we don't need a bottom. We need to raise the bottom. So, and that's kind of what happened with China. China was in a horrible state because of centuries of colonialism and imperialism. And then when they did try to improve their economy, they had lower wages. Some of the jobs moved over there. And it was a good that those people had jobs. It was good they got invested. But because they had a government of action that was fighting for working people, they were able to unleash their people's labor and reinvest in their society. Maybe, Joey, if you want to touch on this issue.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like what China is doing, that's something similar that the United States needs to do. We need an economic bill of rights, and we need to rebuild our infrastructure, and we need to mobilize the population to do that. We need to pay for it. We need to nationalize the banks and America's natural resources. This is extremely vital to make this process happen. But with that being said, though, this is an issue that you'll see a lot of conservatives, liberals as well. You'll say, well, at least you have a job at McDonald's. At least you have a job at Sam's Club. At least you have a job at Walmart. Well, just having a job is not enough. The material reality of the race to the bottom ends up being people losing their homes. It's people losing their place of living, whether it's an apartment or a home. This is people not being able to bring send their kids off to college. This is people not being able to feed their own children or themselves. If we want to, improve people's lives, just giving jobs isn't enough. They need to be well-paid jobs, and that's what the Center for Political Innovation advocates for, and what the John Brown Volunteers advocate for as well.
So we got another question here. I think this is a good ideological question from Martin here. Not a strong government without revolution. Now, I think this is an interesting thing, because it really is a double. When you're demanding a strong government, and the government is owned by the corporations, aren't you only empowering the corporations? And I would say, how are we going to get to a point where we have the power to carry out a revolution without mobilizing the masses?
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think the answer is to build workers' power, build the power of poor Black and brown people to put demands on the government.
Mm-hmm.
And when you do that, the government can, go in a direction of taking more power, because it knows that if we're able to build power and pressure the government, they're on the defensive.
Mm-hmm.
And even though we haven't completely took power yet in a revolution, there can be a fight for reforms, mm-hmm. and a fight for immediate material gains in the buildup to a revolution. Mm-hmm. So it's build workers' power, and when you're building that power, you're building the vanguard, and you're building the potential for a revolution. And I mean, we're not advocating for a violent revolution. Workers do not want violence. You go around telling workers they want violence and see violence every day. Working people, we want to get these things, but the problem is, more than likely, the system ain't going to give it to us. And then once we amass this power, we have these organizations, and they come down. Then we can defend themselves, and that can become a revolutionary situation.
Yeah, I mean, when you saw what happened in Bolivia, for example, right? You know, they built strong unions, they had workplace organization, they organized their communities, they elected local, you know, politicians that actually represented them and their communities. And over time, as they built that, they were able to, you know, when the United States came in and, you know, put in an imperialist, neoliberal people in power, they were able to resist it and force an election. So, you know, it is definitely a complicated conversation, and you have to have that nuance there. But understand that there is a pathway to creating a society through developing people and power within workplaces and communities.
All right, we got a few comments. Yogi Fish, big up John Brown. Yogi Fish, I'll be there in Union Square Saturday. So
Nice.
what time is the speak out in Union Square?
It will be at 5 p.m. and that is on Saturday, September 11th.
Right on. And let's see, I like the ideas coming out here from Martin. I'm not going to respond to them. I'd like to read them though. I was really wanting to focus on how we can organize in this day and age. Samuel, uh, call centers are centered in Phoenix, industrial in the global South. Politics have been manipulated by the ruling class, NGO, and nonprofits. Um, parties, industrial unions. Okay, so that's interesting. So should we're doing this think tank here. We can have, you know, mutual aid organizations. We can have revolutionary community organizations. But I mean, right now, I think the biggest thing we're missing is ideology.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that more people are getting interested in socialism. I think what I want you to do is I want you to have a study group. I mean, you don't talk about this, but was a um, Mao was in a study group studying anarchism before he became among peasants before he came the great revolutionary Mao. So right now we need to begin. We're into social revolution. We've already had the economic revolution, where with the computer age, people are being forced out of work. We need a revolutionary of ideas right now. We need a social revolution that will then, in the change in consciousness, then the masses of people will carry out the political revolution. So I want you in your neighborhood and your online circles to get the We Are City Builders manual, and I want you to start forming study groups. Right here, every other episode on Working Class Revolt, we do a study. We're thinking about studying Stalin's Foundations of Leninism next. Go ahead, Joe. I see you're.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so you can actually contact Caleb Maupin for the books as well. If you were to do that, if you have like a group of several people that would be interested in the books, feel free to contact him. He will send the books to your organization or your group of friends at a discounted rate, specifically because you are studying, you know, this book in particular.
So I think that's it on comments tonight, and it's getting pretty late. Thanks for joining me, Joey.
Absolutely.
Anything to add before we hop off here?
Yeah, I just wanted to, you know, thank you for letting me know that this new format's a thing in the future. You know, everyone that ever wants to go on Dust's live, I really recommend doing it. It's always great to have a conversation with Dust, so definitely recommend it. Thanks for letting me on, man.
All right. Well, I guess can you do the chant with me right quick? Raise your fist. Repeat after me. There we go.
Yeah.
All right. All power to the people.
All power to the people.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night.